Hey everyone, it's Ivan with CapeAdage.com, out with my buddy, and we just wrapped up a pretty cool little adventure. We just finished up, I guess, a 3-day, 2-night adventure into the mountains. It definitely took shape as we kind of fleshed it out last minute. When did you get in?
When was it? Way too late on Thursday night. Yeah, like 1, 2 in the morning. Yeah.
Friday morning. And you got in, and originally the plan was maybe to leave early, but I was like, you know what? Past the point of arbitrary timelines and just rushing for the sake of rushing. So slowly kind of got everything together. We started with bag drag, right?
Bag drag, and then you had a great idea.
I did have a great idea. Sleds. But first we did a bag drag, and that actually led to the sleds, because went through like, okay, what don't we need? What redundancies don't make sense? And kind of figured everything out, parceled out stuff that we could spread load, like tent, stove, things along those lines. Then I weighed my pack.
Yep.
And it was about 60 pounds.
Can't put 300 pounds on a ski.
No. And yeah, my pack was like a solid 60 without 2 liters of water in the belt. Or
your rifle or ammo or
any
of that.
Decided that was a bad idea. I've learned my lesson on Strawberry Mountain getting crushed under weight. So I was like, you know what? What about sleds?
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely been thinking about taking a sled just because, one, traveling in winter, everything is heavy because now you have extra gear. Anytime you're filming, it's always heavy. You have camera gear, tripod, all that stuff. And you can carry a lot more in a sled. And the last time, my last attempt, I guess, solo attempt, going up Strawberry Mountain, I got crushed, like 55-pound pack. I was like over it. And so we went to go look for sleds. And first, where did we try first?
Walmart.
Walmart was sold out of sleds. And in fairness...
Toilet paper too.
Toilet paper too. Granted, I guess it was Friday, April, that'd be the 4th? 4th, I think, something, I don't know. Early April. And so granted, it's a little bit late in the season for sleds, but called around, and kind of where we were before we had to take a trip off of the beaten path, there was Ace Hardware. And I was like, hey, do you guys have any sleds by chance? They're like, yeah, we got sleds. And so cruised over. We ended up getting these, and my good friend asked if we could get a discount.
Yep.
And they're like,
if we bought more than one.
Yes. And they were like, you know what? Let me go find out. I was like, oh, cool. And so we got 10% off 2 sleds. I think, were they about 40 bucks?
Yeah, $39.99.
Yeah. And they're obviously like kids sleds for going in the snow, but as it turns out, they worked pretty good. And for what you're trying to do, i.e. like tow them behind you, they're pretty clutch because they're low, they weren't really high. And so you want something low, so ideally the weight can sit down. But they have a bunch of holes all the way around them. And so what we ended up doing was staging our gear in here, the heavier stuff towards the back. And this whole thing was like seat of the pants. Like,
oh yeah.
I know people tow sleds behind them in the wintertime on skis, so...
Or behind dogs.
Or behind dogs. And so we're like, let's figure this out. And we ended up running a bunch of 550 cord back and forth, cinching everything down. I had this guy because I didn't really want to carry it with me all the time. I already have a pistol on me. And so this guy was in there too. Definitely, depending on how I had it in there, it caught a lot of snow. So I figured that out pretty quick.
Yeah, we went 550 heavy.
Yeah, lots of 550 cord. It worked good. And
I had this idea.
Yeah, when we were in the store, we were trying to figure out how do we want to pull this? And I was like, well, the little rope that came with it's like...
It's on the back.
Yeah.
We repurposed that.
That stuff right there, cut into you. In fairness, 550 will too. And so I was like, man, what about if we could get some garden hose or something like that? And so we asked if there were like scraps of garden hose, which there was not, but they actually sold this tubing by the foot. And so we ended up with 2 3-foot lengths, I think we went with.
Yeah, 3 foot per sled.
Yeah, and it actually worked really well. We both kind of experimented pulling it different ways. A lot of the time I would just throw this over and I would have it riding there. And then I also tried it some, like crossbody. Didn't like that one quite as much. And then also the one you suggest, like basic, I don't even know how to do it.
Under the armpits, over your head.
Under.
And then over your head. Other way. Under your armpits.
I don't know what's happening.
Under your armpits and then over your head. Like a heart, like a backpack. No, other way.
Oh my gosh.
Go.
I can't figure it out. Basically like a yoke.
Go over your head.
Okay.
Then under your armpits, now back over your head, shoulder holster.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
It's science.
If you don't have your yoke neck, it doesn't
And
work.
yeah, basically.
It's like a backpack.
Yeah, kind of pulled like this. It was nice because it was just something different for a while, but I don't think that was the best. Usually for the best for me was actually just down here around the waist. And yeah, started pulling these guys.
Yeah. Definitely cut into these pre-existing holes and decided, dude, where's that? This was like $10 for $2.
Yeah, this was another deal.
10 foot for $2.
Yeah, we got a 10-foot section of PVC because we knew this would chew into this. And so we ended up using a 10-foot section, cut it into like a couple of foot lengths, ran our 550 cord through there so this would actually come under against the bottom. And so it was actually pulling against the PVC pipe rather than just like tearing out these plastic holes. Mobility, pretty key. And to that end, we ended up on skis. Why don't you go over the set you were using?
Yeah, so I was using the Alpine touring setup, which had more of everything, which isn't always good. More weight, more width, bindings you can adjust between downhill and uphill. So had a lot more control coming downhill versus those. But as Ivan saw, his setup was a lot lighter, a lot cheaper. Probably struggled more taking weight uphill, but coming downhill had more resistance to cut through. So really kind of a give and take in both with cost, weight, and different benefits. So definitely I think overall these probably with skins going up was way easier if you're in shape. And then those just struggle a little more with being at, I mean, how much weight do you think you were with your pack and your sled and then your skis and everything else?
I mean the sled that I was dragging was probably at least 75. Like 70 pounds, 75 pounds.
Yeah. So
and then
you're like 275 right there, close to 300 pounds with water on skis rated for a guy who's 6'1" and maybe 200 pounds. Yeah.
And these are not mine. I borrowed these.
Used them well though.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And one thing that I did like about these is I think the last time I was cross-country skiing, I was like, I don't know, probably not double digits. So it's probably like 8, 9, somewhere in there. And
a little more
these,
bendy.
A little more bendy. These bindings were actually really nice, being able to just step into them and have them lock and then press down with a pole, unlock them, step out of them. One thing I did not like is, I don't know, these have these really fast, easy to do skins.
You have that high camber, so your area that you're only dragging on, it only covers from about there to there, so about a third of the ski, whereas these, the skins go the full length.
Yeah, and like the skins only covering that short part, there were definitely times, especially, dragging a 75-pound sled and trying to get traction and not having it and like about eating it hard. But overall, these actually did a good job for me, in part to the boots, being able to step out of them.
You wore those the entire time?
Yeah, I wore these boots the whole time. They did a good job.
And the snowshoes around the campsite and then all the way
up. That was the other
down.
thing. We did have snowshoes also, and being able to move back and forth between those two kind of platforms, like,
you needed it.
Yeah. That was clutch because you don't want to ski everywhere.
No.
And
how much snow is our campsite? I mean, we didn't even dig down to the bottom. It was at least 4 or 5 feet base, at least maybe 6.
No, there was a lot of snow. So being able to move back and forth between those is pretty key. After getting our sleds, we pretty much consolidated to a vehicle and cruised out here. Again, late start. Figuring things out as we go, like hanging out in Ace Hardware.
Yeah.
Being like, what about this? And kind of going through and piecing it together.
Not social distancing.
Not social distancing very well. And then, got out here. And then once we got here, it was like, okay, how should we pack these? And we pretty much went through a lot of trial and error, and just went through and started packing things together. Been like, okay, we probably want this to be this way, and
A lot of trial and error.
there were definitely a lot of trial and error. But we eventually got them loaded, and there were definitely some really clutch things that were
Learning.
they would have well, not only learning, but things that would have got left if everything was going on our backs.
Yeah.
Like definitely the ability to carry more, and so
Drag more.
drag more. And I guess we finally stepped off about,
It's later in the evening.
yeah, like it wasn't until probably
It's
at
afternoon.
least, yeah, maybe 2 or something along those lines. And where we were going, attempting to go, we drove as far as we could on the road through some snow and stuff like that, and then finally got to where it's like, this is the end, basically where they would put all the snowmobiles in and stuff like that. Got everything on there and started cruising and just started kind of grinding out those miles. We pretty much just grounded out from where we are. It goes up to Thompson Pass, which basically divides Idaho and Montana. And it is just one big grade. I will say, going that entire way, at no point was I like, oh man, I wish I didn't have this sled. Like I wish I had my backpack on that weighed 60 pounds. So it was good. Just kind of grounded out. And for me personally, it was also a, hey, this is what it's like to use cross-country skis again. Because
You do both, right?
this guy's done, you grew up on skis, yeah?
Oh yeah, I don't remember a time when I didn't know how to ski, so yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a good learning experience for about 5 miles up.
Still,
And-
it's a completely different game though when you have weight on your back and weight in the sled and you're, hauling and you're pulling.
No, for sure.
So.
But it was good. And yeah, we pretty much just ground out those miles. And by the time we got up there, the sun was setting.
Oh yeah.
And
About 6-7 miles.
I think it was about 6 to up to where we ended up finally stopping.
Yeah.
Kind of up at the top, and at that point, make a choice. Either put on headlamps and keep going, or set up camp there. And honestly, we wouldn't need headlamps. There was so much illume.
Oh yeah.
The moon was almost full, and I mean, you could see your shadow from the moonlight. But basically, I think both. I know I was hungry.
I was done. Yeah, I was definitely hungry.
Yeah. And I would look back occasionally and watch this guy try and stretch his quads that were cramping him to death. So it was definitely the right choice. And I knew further on it was going to get like kind of technical too. So I was like, all right, let's set it up here. And got busy making camp. This guy went out, pretty much chopped down trees.
Yeah, I was definitely having a fire.
Yeah, and he made a rad fire. And meanwhile, I started melting a bunch of snow for water, and yeah, ended up having some dinner and finally crashing out that night. The next day we got up and kind of a late start. I busied myself while someone slept in.
So you got up, I didn't.
Yeah, but I got up, went and dug myself a little snow cave,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. Hanging out in my little igloo. No big deal. And then we finally got going, broke camp, and loaded stuff up. And from there, I think it was about 1.5 miles to where the trail started, like the actual trailhead. And once we got there, it got really technical really fast. And that's where lots more learning occurred with respect to moving sleds. Yeah, how did that first bit go?
It's a lot of trial and error. Like we tried to move with the sleds and the skis and everything and realized that now that we were completely off any type of trail, I mean, the trail was under us, but 6 feet of snow below us. So between drifts and everything else and the fact that the trail went from, 4 lanes wide down to less than a sidewalk.
And I mean, really, while there is a trail there, I've been up there in the summer, it was basically just the side of the mountain at this point.
Yeah.
And it got really hard really quick. And I think it took us once or twice of the sled just sliding down and like
rolling.
almost dragging you off the mountain, and then or me off the mountain. I was like, we should rethink this.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I already had reservation. I'm like, man, I don't even know if I told you, but I was like, I don't know if we're gonna make it up to the lake.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Just because the hour we were at already, which wasn't super late, but I think it was coming up on maybe noon or maybe 11 or something. And even though the distance up there was probably only about 2 miles, just how technical it was. And so what we did first is, I think we skied forward, right?
Yeah, we came up and it was on that steep grade, that steep pitch, and we were taking the most elevation, and the trail got narrower, and then there's all those trees. And then we came also to those openings that were huge ambush, or avalanche, danger zones.
Chutes.
Yeah, chutes. So we decided maybe we should just scout ahead, leave the weight, scout ahead, see what we could do to make kind of like a shelf or trail along the way. And we were moving obviously a lot faster, a lot easier doing that.
Night and day difference.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's right. So we scouted forward and found a cool spot where it's like, you know what, if nothing else, like this is a cool spot to camp, to include because there was a lot of dead trees standing around it for fires. And then, we ended up trying to basically, were you on skis and I was on snowshoes?
We kind of went back and forth, but yeah, basically you went back and forth.
And so, because I had thrown my snowshoes on, and we basically tried to trample/ski down a path for our sleds, that basically a track for them to go on, because where we were going, like falling would have consequences.
In the Alaskan frontier, this is a common problem. This is what Ivan gets for not bringing sled dogs or his children, which are one and the same.
That night we ended up making camp at our little campsite there. Started with digging out a massive spot for our tent, which ironically, if we'd explored a little more, like, I don't know, how far was that?
10 feet.
About 10 feet. And it was like this beautiful big hollow from the wind and everything, which, whatever, it is what it is. But we dug that spot out, and then you went to town like lumberjack style.
Yeah, you were refilling our waters and getting dinner ready, and I tried to make myself useful, getting some
Cutting trees down.
Some fuel for the fire, and taking your advice on, because the snow was so deep, that fire would just burn itself out going into the snow. So
that's one of those, it's a trick, man.
Yeah.
Like, you either have to build your fire up really high, knowing it doesn't matter, it's still gonna burn down, or you have to dig down. And neither of us wanted to dig like 6 feet of snow till we hit the ground. So yeah,
if it was 6 foot, it might have been deeper.
Who knows?
We didn't find the bottom.
No. But we started with, like tons and tons of green boughs, and just piled all that stuff. And then, started our fire on top of that, I guess. And that was, man, fires in the backcountry in the snow, pretty clutch.
Morale right there.
Yeah, huge morale boost.
Yeah.
And no, we ended up crashing out. I guess that was last night. And then Sunday, I guess that would be. Yeah, Sunday night.
we got snowed on pretty good, and then with the fire going, it turned from snow to the trees melting all the snow, and that came down to you're sitting by the fire, you're just getting rained on.
I forgot about that. Yeah, it was that horrible stage too, which honestly made it even harder to start a fire, in that not cold enough, not freezing, basically.
Yeah.
So it was snowing.
Just barely above that freezing temperature, so it lands on you and that melts, or it's coming down to sleep.
It just melts immediately. And that yeah, it was not very fun. But
Literally put a damper on the fire and the twig stove and all that. Well, you got it going.
yeah,
Yeah.
eventually got it going. Layers wise, was there anything that was like super clutch for you?
Yeah, waterproofing layer at that point. Like you had
Yeah.
that, you had the Wild Things Happy Jacket on, and my layer was not waterproof, and I thought it was. Insulated, not waterproof.
Insulated, not what. Honestly, I don't know that mine was actually like waterproof, but I'm sure it's DWR and it's relatively new. But that for me was super clutch. The Wild Things Happy suit, and
Yeah, you're able to be, functional
Yeah.
and dry and able to move around and
you
continue to
can
cook
just
and all that.
sit also and stay warm. And then I definitely wore that thing to bed. And so last night, before we went to bed, I ended up making some water, and I ended up pouring way hotter water than I had initially intended into this Nalgene bottle. And I was like, wow, this is really warm. And so I threw it inside my jacket with me. And I ended up waking up in the middle of the night.
You woke me up to tell me about it.
Yeah, like, I was overheat. Like I had to unzip my entire bag, like unzip this jacket, which I slept in also, take my hood off, take my beanie off. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so hot. And then lay there for like an hour before I cooled off enough to zip everything back up. But yeah, that definitely kept me warm.
Mm-hmm.
Where we had stopped last night was not where we were trying to go. We ended up stopping short, and the rest of the trail actually cut down through woods, and then there was some switchback, and eventually got up into a bowl where, pretty cool lake up there.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I've been up there a number of times with my boys some, like in the summer, and it's a cool spot, but weren't able to get up there. This morning though, I did kind of explore around, did a little bit of filming and stuff, and then this guy got another way bigger fire than last night, I think, going today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Because today is the best day. Today's the day when any excess food, you don't have to save it because you know you're leaving. So
This is
it was
true. So
caloric
everything
intake
just,
day.
Although I will say I wished I saved marshmallows from last night for this morning because we had such a good fire. And at the end of last night, I was just like eating them cold because our fire finally burned out. I was like, damn,
It's pretty depressing.
it was depressing. But
we weren't at home. We're out here in the woods.
you get what you get, man. And then, after we had a little bit more snow today. It wasn't like yesterday though, I don't think.
No.
And then we, decided to pack up. I will say pretty much everything I have is wet now, which that's the thing.
It definitely got a little bit warmer, but not in a good way. It went from just below freezing to just above, which is probably the worst.
Yeah, like the snow just gets all gross, and it is what it is. Yeah. One thing for me through this whole thing, talking about everything being wet, is like legitimate layers, like technical clothing is so key.
Yeah,
I mean,
constantly taking them off.
And being able, because you constantly have to be able to regulate body temperature so you don't like wet everything out. But even then, being able to have layers where if you wet them out, they will dry. I mean, like everything I have, whether these PDW like soft shell pants or this Active Flex jacket, I've worn all this stuff the entire time. I think I have like a merino base layer shirt from First Spear or something, some merino socks.
It's wicking.
Yeah, but I mean things that will basically, because then I'll throw on the happy suit and be like, I'm cold and wet, pull the happy suit on, and one, you immediately warm up, and then two, eventually you're dry.
Yeah, because once you're pulling this weight, you're no matter what the temperature is, you're going to be sweating.
Yeah.
The second you stop with this weather, I mean, you're going to be freezing, and especially on top of it, it's raining, you're going to be soaked and then feeling even colder.
Yeah, the ability to basically scale up and down as needed, that was definitely huge. As we made our way back though, the downhill was fun on a certain, like, some of it was fun, but then it also presented its own challenges. all of a sudden on the way down, the sled that was your friend tried to kill you. Yeah, no, I mean, they're sleds, like they're made for kids to like sled down hills, and no really method of braking or anything like that, and definitely not as suited for what we were trying to do with them. But
they're going for the path of least resistance, which sometimes is not the path you're on, which normally tends to be just straight down
sometimes
the
it's
mountain.
actually straight down the mountain rather than along the side. It kind of cut both ways though. Like sometimes they would grab an edge and they would do good.
Yeah.
And they would, even if they weren't on your path, they would parallel you. And I think,
You had a couple good runs cutting across some of those openings off the avalanche fields.
there was a couple times, but I mean, it was also like, oh God, please don't crush me.
Yeah.
Like trying to outrun my sled, like so I just didn't get taken out. I felt, I'm gonna name my sled Ash Jr. because I feel like every once in a while it just yells go faster and then like tries to kill me.
Yeah, mine's just the low slider, I think, as of right now.
I like low
So,
slider.
Yeah.
That's good.
But,
Yeah,
it definitely work against though your whole like Nordic touring type. You know, you get in the rhythm, you start going, and then this thing wants to just decide to be an earth anchor and just stop that momentum.
And
that rhythm.
I mean, all the little learning points too, like that PVC pipe, which honestly is probably the only reason the sleds didn't self-destruct, because it would catch on that top lip, so you're pulling against that entire length. But if it started going faster to where you didn't have tension, it could get caught and go under, and then all of a sudden it felt like your sled was like 500 pounds, like because it would just catch everything, especially because the snow's so sticky right now too.
Yeah, with that temperature being just above freezing, it was not our friend. And like we kind of learned, you know, not having the weight up front helped have the front or the weight in the rear, but then that wasn't your friend on the trails because then that started to want to go down. So we kind of played around with putting a second line on the back there.
That definitely saved me. So you took a different route with respect to all of the weight in your sled. What did you end up doing?
Well, I ended up deciding that I had too much weight in the sled. With the pack I had just made it too wide. So like we learned, if you
And it
got
wasn't
out,
even the weight so much as the outer pockets were past the width of the sled, right?
yeah, so with the sled, you know, riding lower down the snow, that started to act as a little bit of resistance. And so I decided, you know, screw it, I'm just gonna put the weight on my back. Again, I had the bigger skis, they were already heavy, so I was gonna try with those try to wear some of that weight. So that really helped me with the sled to keep it tracking behind me. And then also the skis really helped. They're a lot stronger. Again, more is more on those, more weight, but I was able to get a little bit further ahead of you, drop weight off, come back, and then...
As I was yelling for help.
I did.
This thing about almost like drug me off the mountain. And then not only is this thing trying to kill me, but at the same time, my knees are trying to bend in ways my knees are not supposed to bend. And I'm just like, I need a hand. Are you good? Are you good?
I don't know what you said, but you were just screaming something.
And I'm like trying to take the bindings off, and I couldn't get enough pressure on them to take. It was
learning.
It was rough. Learning definitely occurred.
Yeah, again, they're good for what they're meant for, but when you get upside down,
trails.
you're on the side of a hill that's not that, and your sled's pulling you down upside down, it's a little hard. If you can't get your pull to get them off your feet, you're kind of just maybe going to need new ACLs. Yeah.
You know, just reconstructive surgery. Once we made it back to kind of the actual like road part of the trail, it was definitely nicer.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, it no longer having to, I was about to say no longer having to worry about the sled like trying to drag you off, but then it was kind of a matter of having the sled find the track you wanted. Because people had been cruising on like snowmobiles and stuff like that. And so it was pretty tracked up, but eventually you could get a pretty good track and try and outrun your sled before it takes you out. I mean, fortunately, the snow wasn't really in our favor.
No, it wasn't quite cold enough to get a good slide and glide.
But I mean, it was enough to where it wasn't a ton of work just moving it in. I mean,
But
pretty
with
general
that,
grade.
you weren't staying as warm. You know, you weren't sweating as much. You weren't working as hard, but at the same time, you're getting a lot of wind. And there's a lot of wind in
Yeah.
your face coming down with how open this is.
The
compared
wind
to the
kicked
woods. Yeah.
for a while through there.
Yeah.
But no, eventually made it back here. And so that was, this is the third day of this adventure.
Yeah, so we covered what? Took us 2 days to get up, 1 day to get down.
Yeah, we went up there on, I guess we went up on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Saturday.
Yeah, so no,
early
you,
afternoon.
Yeah, you got in Friday night.
Well,
Saturday
yeah,
morning.
technically Saturday morning. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Saturday, Sunday, and then today being Monday, April 6th. There are a lot of people hanging out in their houses.
Yeah.
It's been really cool to get out here and
Definitely.
share an adventure. And right now, a lot of people, as I just mentioned, like they're sitting at home. And maybe that's the right thing. Maybe we should have more distance between us, like 6 feet. I don't know. But whether it is with a good friend or your immediate family, like when are you gonna have blocks of unbroken time to go do stuff?
Like you're saying, man, focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. Go out there and do it.
I mean, sphere of influence versus sphere of concern. Driving up here, we passed a bunch of people fishing, standing out there in the middle of the river.
Yeah.
And a whole, looked like a big family hanging out, having a barbecue off on the side of the road. And then eventually we got to the point where we saw no one. But no, I mean, adventure, it's out there. And it doesn't have to be something grand either. I mean, if you are at home with your family and you don't, for whatever reason, have access to something right now, like have an adventure in the backyard, man. Set up a tent, set up a tarp, whatever. Work on making fires. Making fires is always a learning experience for me. Learning what works, what doesn't, but no, go out there and have a good adventure. This has definitely been a huge learning experience for me.
This is the 1.0. 2.0 is coming.
Yes.
Maybe 3.0.
Yeah, no, I'm already like constantly through this entire thing, I'm like, okay, what this sled needs is, and
Well, it's a competition now. I mean,
oh yeah, who can have the best sled? Ash Jr. or the
low slider.
or the low slider. But no, like I definitely want to do this, especially before all the snow melts. Be able to hopefully get back out here. But if you have the opportunity, or if you don't for that matter, make the opportunity. Like you have time, you probably have the opportunity. Your adventure doesn't need to be grand. Like go do something. But thank you for coming out
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a
joining
good
me
time.
on this. It's been a blast. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time. I know what you're thinking. It must be nice. It's hard.
I didn't get Christmas because I was in jail, so this is nice.
No, it's fine. I was trying to get